I thought owning my own ranch meant one simple thing. What happens on my land is my decision. Then one Monday morning, I looked out across my property and saw something that made absolutely no sense. A bright orange construction fence, heavy equipment, and 3 men standing beside a fresh survey stake planted right in the middle of my pasture. I walked outside and asked the obvious question, "Who gave you permission to be here?" One of the workers pointed toward the road. "The HOA. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because there was no HOA anywhere near my ranch. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. My property covered hundreds of acres of open land, woods, pasture, and a small creek. The nearest subdivision was almost a mile away, but apparently that subdivision had a problem. Their sewer system needed a new route, and according to the HOA board, the easiest route was straight through my ranch. They had already hired contractors. They had already marked the ground. And worst of all, they believed they had the legal right to do it. I called the HOA president. Her name was Linda. She answered like I was bothering her. "There's no need to make this difficult," she said. I asked her one question. "What gives you the right to put a sewer line on my property?" She paused. Then she said something I'll never forget. "The neighborhood has used that area for years." I looked across my pasture. There wasn't a road. There wasn't a sewer pipe. There wasn't even an easement sign. Nothing. So I asked her to send me the document proving they had an easement. She said she would. 20 minutes later, I received an email. Attached was a 6-page document. Linda thought she had one. She hadn't, because the document didn't grant the HOA ownership of my land. It didn't even grant them a permanent sewer easement. It referenced a completely different parcel, different legal description, different boundary lines, different owner. They had made a massive mistake. But instead of admitting it, the HOA doubled down. The next morning, the construction crew came back. This time, they brought even more equipment, an excavator, 2 dump trucks, and a trenching machine. I stood at the edge of my property and told them they were trespassing. The supervisor showed me a folder. Inside was a letter from the HOA's attorney. It claimed the HOA had authority to install underground utilities across my property. I read it twice. Then I asked the supervisor one question. "Does this letter say they own the land?" He shook his head. "No." "Does it show a recorded easement?" Another shake. "No." "Then why are you digging?" He looked uncomfortable. "Because the HOA told us to." So I stepped back. I didn't argue. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply pulled out my phone and started recording. And then I called the county recorder's office. The clerk searched the parcel number. A few minutes later, she confirmed what I already suspected. There was no sewer easement, no utility easement, no access agreement, nothing. But there was something else. A recorded boundary survey from decades earlier. And that survey made one thing extremely clear. My ranch was completely outside the subdivision. The HOA had been planning to run their sewer line through private property that they didn't own. Still, Linda refused to stop. That afternoon, she sent me another message. "If you obstruct the project, the HOA will pursue legal action." That's when I knew this wasn't about a misunderstanding anymore. They were trying to pressure me into surrendering my land. So I hired a property attorney. He reviewed everything. The deed, the survey, the county records, the HOA documents. Then he smiled. He told me something that changed the entire situation. Don't fight them on their terms. He pulled out the original property map. Then he pointed to a tiny section along the edge of the subdivision. There's already an existing utility corridor. The HOA had ignored it. Why? Because using that route would cost them significantly more money. They wanted the shortcut, and my ranch was their shortcut. My attorney sent one letter. It was only a few pages, but the message was devastatingly simple. Stop construction immediately. Remove all unauthorized equipment. Do not enter the property again without written permission. And if the HOA believed it had an easement, produce the recorded instrument proving it. The construction stopped the next morning. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then I received a certified letter. The HOA was now demanding that I grant them a permanent sewer easement. Their offer? $1. That's right. They wanted permanent underground access across my ranch. For $1. I almost framed the letter. Instead, my attorney forwarded it to the county. That's when everything exploded. The county discovered the HOA had submitted an inaccurate site plan for the SO project. The plan showed the proposed route as if it were inside a utility corridor. But the actual property record showed that corridor ended nearly a mile away. The HOA had planned their entire project around a boundary they apparently never verified. And now they had a serious problem. The county ordered the project halted. The contractors walked away. And the HOA suddenly had to explain why they had entered private property without permission. A few weeks later, Linda called me. Her tone was completely different. No arrogance, no threats, no talk about neighborhood rights. Just one question. What would it take to resolve this? I told her the same thing I'd been saying from day one. Stay off my land. She asked whether I would consider granting an easement. I said no, not because I wanted revenge, but because I had learned something important. Once you give someone permanent access to your property, getting that control back can be almost impossible. The HOA eventually had to rear out the sewer system through the legitimate utility corridor. It cost them far more money. It took several additional months. And most importantly, they never touched my ranch again. A few weeks later, I was standing on the same hill where I'd first seen those orange construction fences. They were gone. The equipment was gone. The survey stakes were gone. All that remained was open pasture stretching toward the horizon. My land, my boundary, my decision. The HOA thought they had found an easy shortcut. Instead, they discovered something every property owner should remember. A neighborhood association may have rules. It may have lawyers. It may have money. But none of that automatically gives it ownership of land that belongs to someone else. And when they tried to take my ranch for their soul pipes, they made one very expensive mistake. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?